So the time is 6:33 p.m. It is Monday, June 24th, 2024, and we will call to order a meeting of the Burlington City Council. The first to adopt our agenda. Thank you, Councillor Bergman. Is there a second? Second from Councillor Broderick. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have our agenda. Public forum this evening is item 2 on our agenda. It is set for a time certain of 6:45. So we will turn back to that in a moment. If there's anyone here in person in City Hall who wishes to sign up for public forum, you may do so in the back of the room. So we'll go now to item 3 on our agenda, which is climate emergency reports. Is there any councillor with a climate emergency report? We'll go to item 4 on our agenda then. Item 4 on our agenda is public health and safety emergency updates. Is there any councillor with a public health and safety emergency update? Councillor Grant.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone that the Public Safety Committee meetings are not actually on town meeting TV. And given the issues with the budget gap, as the chair of that committee, I really didn't push spending the extra money to add it. So I do want to remind everyone again about looking at the calendar, seeing when the meetings are, and when you click on the meetings on the calendar, the media file will contain the meeting. So the public does have easy access to these meetings, and we continue to talk about a lot of interesting things related to community safety that involve our fire and police departments. And our July meeting, we're going to be talking about, with the recruitment team, talking about recruitment, retention. We are going to be talking to the officer. There's a lot of questions about the lack of traffic enforcement. And we actually have an officer who does traffic enforcement on overtime. He uses overtime hours and he does it. So we're going to be talking to him, and we're also going to be getting some information on a new plan that the fire department has, coordinating with other community partners to offer medically assisted treatment to those suffering from overdoses but don't want to be transported to the hospital. Thank you.
Yes. Is there anyone here who, thank you, Director Longo. And yes, if anyone else wants to sign up for public forum, it will start at 6:45, and there are forms in the back of the room. Are there any other councillors with a public health and safety emergency update? All right. And I will note Councillor Doherty is joining us online. Thank you, Councillor Doherty. It is not yet 6:45 p.m., and so we will turn to a later item on our agenda, which is item number 7, committee reports, and an opportunity for councillors to speak to the work of their committees at the top of the meeting. Is there any councillor that has a committee report? Yes, Councillor Bergman.
So just to note that the Charter Change Committee is going to be taking up the police oversight charter change tomorrow at 7:30. It's going to be at DPW, and it's going to be following the TUC meeting. Hopefully the TUC meeting will get done. I'll keep my mouth quieter than usual to help that along. And if we are fortunate, we should be able to actually pass that out of the committee and back to the council in time for meeting deadlines on a November ballot, but there are still some issues that we've got to work through, so it's not exactly clear, but that's the intention. And if we don't get it done tomorrow night, then we do have some availability of time to hold special meetings even more this week and early next week. So that my intention is to meet that deadline so we can bring something in time to get warned for the November ballot, if that's what the pleasure of everybody is. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that update, Councillor Bergman. Councillor Barlow, the TUC was name dropped. Can we go to you for a committee report?
Thank you. The Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee will be meeting tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. at 645 Pine Street. We'll be doing some agenda planning around the building emissions reduction ordinance that this council referred, as well as talking about some agenda planning for the review of the rental weatherization ordinance, also referred by the council. And we'll additionally be talking about the GMT funding and planning, and the Bank and Cherry concepts, Bank and Cherry Street plan concepts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor Carpenter, I believe I saw your hand raised.
Yes, I just want to report on something that the HR committee's been talking about and something I've been encouraging for some time, and I've had conversations with the new mayor and administration about starting a much more robust evaluation process of department heads. There's work to be done around that, and they have an interest, and we have an interest in providing a format for 360 reviews, so that's something we're going to be looking at shortly and implementing into this next year.
Thank you very much, Councilor Carpenter. We'll go Councilor McKnight and then Councilor Shannon.
Thank you. The PAC meeting, Parks, Arts, and Culture Committee meeting will be on Thursday this week at noon, and we are moving forward some issues related to the clear-cutting incident at Keyslick Park, as well as talking about encampment-related data in the parks and getting some clarity from our Parks Director on that. And those are our main agenda items. We have a couple other small things. Encourage folks to join.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Councilor Shannon.
Thank you, President Travers. The Ordinance Committee will be meeting Monday, July 1st at 11 a.m., and we will be discussing, again, the graffiti ordinance and the trespass ordinance, as well as getting a brief introduction on the condo conversion ordinance.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilor Shannon. Councilor Grant and then Councilor Newbeezer.
The Public Safety Committee meeting that we just talked about a little bit ago, the next meeting will be on July 18th, and the REIB Committee meeting will be on July 9th. I want to mention that the ribbon cutting for the Embrace and Belonging Monument in Dewey Park in the historic North End, it will be this Wednesday, ceremony starting at 11 a.m. This was a rescheduled time due to a delivery issue, but will be happening this Wednesday at 11 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Newbeezer.
Just a reminder, right the day before Public Safety, July 17th, if I'm looking at my calendar right, CDNR is going to be meeting in the Sharon Busher Conference Room at 6:30. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. Any other councilors with a committee update? All right. So I think we are approaching close enough to 6:45 that I can at least introduce public forum, at which point we should be close enough to 6:45 to open it up. I will say under our council rules, as we turn to public forum here, we will first hear from Burlington residents here in City Hall, then among those Burlington residents online, and then we will repeat this process for non-Burlington residents. As a reminder for those who are wishing to participate online, we've had a council rule in place here for some time that you need to have signed up at least an hour in advance through the City Council's website. When we turn to public forum, each speaker will be provided 2 minutes. When I call your name, if you're here in person, please come up and have a seat at the table. Make sure the microphone is on with the green light, and make sure you speak directly into the microphone. For those online, I will let you know once you have been unmuted. When providing comments, please direct them to me as the chair and not to any other individual. It is important that City Hall remain a safe place for those who serve, those in attendance, and those watching our meetings. The council respects and values a diversity of opinions and perspectives on public issues. We ask, however, that all comments be free from individualized attacks, hate, harassment, obscenities, or other derogatory language regarding an individual's legally protected characteristics. We also ask that public comments avoid conduct which is unreasonably loud, disruptive, or discourteous. If I interrupt a speaker at any point, it will be because I'm providing the speaker an opportunity to proceed in accordance with the rules as I've described them. If public comment continues in violation of these rules, I reserve the right to end public comment at that point in time. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and call it 6:45, and we will open public forum. We have 3 Burlington residents here in City Hall, 1 non-Burlington resident who has signed up for public forum, and we have at least 1 Burlington resident who has signed up online. The first individual here in City Hall who signed up for public forum is Dave Marr. Dave Marr will be followed by Ryan Nick. Dave, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dave Marr. I know you all like data-driven solutions, so I have some data to present. This is a chart I put together with data available on the internet. On the horizontal axis is a ranking of states from the most liberal to the most conservative. On the vertical axis, we have the homeless rate for each state from usafacts.com. Now, each point on this chart represents the data from one state. And we have a trend line generated by Excel using a mathematical algorithm that I don't want to describe in any more detail. Now, if you look at the trend line, you will see that the liberal states have a higher homeless rate in general than the more conservative states. Now, there is some scatter, but that is the trend. Now, why is this? I've heard it said that this is due to the greater availability of housing in the conservative states. So to test that, I made a second plot. To take that out of the equation, I made a plot of just those states within a narrow band of vacancy rate from 4% to 6%. Now you see the exact same trend. So that tells me that the trend is not due to housing availability. So just for completeness, what I did is I added bands of vacancy rate for representing all states which I had data. And you can see the same trend occurs for all bands of housing availability. So if this trend is not due to housing availability, what does it due to? My conclusion is that it's due to the generous services and lenient treatment provided by the more liberal states. So that's the data. What should we do with it? Well, I have some ideas, but I'm running out of time, so stay tuned for the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Next, we have Ryan Nick, to be followed by Jane McDougall.
Thank you, President Travers. In the last hour and a half, a group of concerned citizens and residents stopped 2 thefts and recovered about $4,000 worth of stolen goods from a Church Street retailer. My comments tonight are about the expectations downtown for the remainder of the summer. I'm aware this isn't a Q&A session, but these are some questions to consider. Are we expected to prevent retail thefts from known repeat violent offenders on a daily and now hourly basis? Are we expected to feel unsafe in our main garage downtown? Should we expect human feces in the one elevator in the garage, or can we expect a clean garage? When can we expect that the 2 closed stairwells to be reopened, or should we expect them to remain closed throughout the remainder of the summer? Should downtown employees and business owners be expected to respond to daily mental health and public safety crises? I would just like to know, what are the expectations downtown for the remainder of the summer? It occurs to me that these problems are caused by 50 to 100 repeat violent offenders downtown. We know who they are. We know where they live. Are we unwilling or unable to do anything about it? Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. We have Jane McDougall to then be followed by, Michael Nettle.
Hello, my name is Jane McDougall. Do you know anything by the Parkway, Champlain Parkway? How is it going to be connected and where? Because it started last year. It's a new road. It's from the south end, the Champlain Parkway. Is it going into Battery Street? But we need more help for the sidewalks also.
Thank you for the comment. We received a presentation at our last meeting from DPW on the Champlain Parkway, and we're expecting them to be back at some point later this summer.
When do you think about that? Because it's going to connect up with Cherry Street, isn't it?
Public forum isn't really the space to engage in a back and forth on that, but certainly wanted to flag for you if you were able to watch our last city council meeting, there was a presentation from DPW on the Champlain Parkway.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michael Nettle.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Nadell. I'm a resident of the Old North End in Burlington. I've come here for about a year to talk about the overflow of the pod community on Elmwood, and I didn't want to talk about it tonight. On the way down here, there was spurious activity that led me to speak about it once again. I've been asking for some sort of routine patrol up and down the street, or some kind of plan of action, because it's unwieldy at times to be a citizen in that area, and I like living here. I don't want to move. One of the other things I want to talk about is the property taxes going up, and you know, I'm a landlord. Try to keep our rents really low. So far, we had 3 of our tenants move on to permanent home ownership. I don't think it's, you know, nice to have a really high rent. It's low rents have helped me throughout my life, so we keep our rents super low. But our property taxes keep going up, and I hear it's going to go up again. And I was wondering, boy, it'd be great if there was some sort of rebate or something for the people who have lower affordable rents to keep the community vibe going here in Burlington, because I think that's needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is the last Burlington resident we have signed up in City Hall. We have 1 Burlington resident signed up online. Are you able to promote that speaker, or should I do that? You're good? Okay. Sharon Busher, you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, I can. Thank you, President Travers. I wanted to speak tonight because tonight is, as far as I'm concerned, the most important night of the year for the city and for the council. The action that you take tonight sets the stage for our year and what services people get and the quality of life in Burlington. So I wanted to, first of all, acknowledge all the work that the mayor has put into this budget, and the fact that she also has offered a budget that shares the burden, not just on residents, but also has initially came forward, and it continues to be the proposal to increase the gross receipts tax and to also increase the hotel tax for 1 year for that, for both of them. And the other thing that she's included in the budget is a commitment, an enhancement for inclusion and equity, not only as you deliver services and as the administration works with others, but welcoming people into our community. That commitment and that attention to that department is so key for the wellness of our society and Burlington as a whole. And I also wanted to acknowledge and thank the mayor for working with every counselor to try to get a budget that you all feel delivers the services that your constituents want. And there is an affordability component because she shared that burden. It's not just on the taxpayer, it's on businesses. And I want to thank her for her willingness to work with everybody. And I want to acknowledge the council's ability to work with her as we move forward into the next year's budget, which she has agreed to start working on as of July 1st. So thank you again for everyone's effort, and I look forward to the passage of this budget.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That was our last speaker online. We now turn back to City Hall. We have one non-Burlington resident signed up here in City Hall, and that is Karen Sita.
Mr. President, City Councilors, Madam Mayor, for all the weirdos out there, I am not going to bash the mayor because I love her, and I'm part of the women who want to have this world be like Barbie Land, where women support each other, they love each other, and they want them to be successful in their careers. And of course, I grew up knowing that Barbie could be anything, so therefore women can be anything. So I'm very glad to see a woman leading, regardless of our opinion, my political side. I'm here to talk about every Vermonter's constitutional right to happiness engraved under Article 1, to not only pursue it, but obtain it. And I'm fighting a monumental case in the federal courts regarding a Vermonter pursuing happiness. And I want each Vermonter, each Burlingtonians to recognize that they have that constitutional right under Article 1 to pursue happiness and obtain it, and to really evaluate what does that mean, what does that look like, what does that look like when you are serving others, what does that look like when you are in government, and I just want us to remember that fact. And it makes me happy to see women succeed, it makes me happy to see people of color businesses. It makes me happy to see that Vermont is recognizing the struggles of our rural community. It makes me happy to see that women are realizing that they can and really can be anything they want to be. And I also want to remind every Vermonter that, you know, when you are hurting another Vermonter, whether it's through theft, whether it's through other acts of violence, you're really hurting a community and making us sad. And we all have a constitutional right to happiness. So, Madam Mayor, I love you. And to the City Council, thank you for your service. And thank you for recognizing in every decision that you make that we as Vermonters can and have the legal constitutional right to pursue and obtain our happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last speaker that we have signed up for public comment, so we will go ahead and close public forum at 6:55 p.m. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, and just so councilors know, after this item, we will briefly recess the City Council meeting and turn to the Local Control Commission. On the consent agenda, the recommended action is to move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated. Is there a motion along those lines from any councilor? Councilor Shannon, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Grant. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The consent agenda passes unanimously. As I mentioned, we will now briefly recess the City Council meeting at 6:56 p.m. and turn to the Local Control Commission, which we will open at 6:57 p.m. The first item on the agenda there is to move to adopt the agenda. As Chair of the License Committee, Councilor Shannon, can I turn to you for, or Commissioner Shannon, can I turn to you for a motion on that?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have our agenda. Next item is the consent agenda. Commissioner Shannon,
Move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda passes unanimously. We have 4 items on our deliberative agenda. Commissioner Shannon, I will turn to you for a motion on item 3.1.
Move to approve the 2024-2025 first-class liquor license application for Felino's Pizza, 71 South Union Street, Unit 1, with all standard conditions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grant. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item 3.1 passes unanimously. Commissioner Shannon, can I turn to you for item 3.2?
Move to approve the 2024-2025 outside consumption permit application for Felino's Pizza, 71 South Union Street, Unit 1.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Grant. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Commissioner Shannon, item 3.3.
Move to approve the first and second class liquor license applications for Great Harvest Bakery and Cafe with all standard conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Grant. Any discussion on that motion? We'll go to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That is unanimous. And Commissioner Shannon, last item on our deliberative agenda, item 3.4.
Move to approve the 2024-2025 outside consumption permit application for Great Harvest Bakery and Cafe at 382 Pine Street.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Grant. Any discussion on item 3.4? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you as always to the work of our License Committee. Seeing no other business on our Local Control Commission agenda, we will adjourn that meeting at 6:59 p.m. And we will now resume the City Council meeting at 7 p.m. And that takes us now to our deliberative agenda. The first item on our deliberative agenda, we have a team from the airport here with respect to Project Next. And we will invite those folks up. And I think once you're prepared, turn the floor over to you for an introduction and a presentation here on item 6.1. I will say, Director Longo, I flew in to what is currently your North Concourse earlier today, and so I'm particularly excited by this presentation. So Director Longo, could I turn the floor over to you?
Excellent. Thank you, Council President Traverse and City Councilors, Mayor, for the support and really the next opportunity for what really is going to be another historic change to the terminal building at the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport. With me today is the airport leadership team. I have Larry Lackey, our Director of Planning, Engineering, and Sustainability, Marie Friedman, our Director of Finance, Jeff Bartley, our Director of Innovation and Marketing, and Hannah Dusabalon, our Executive Assistant. And we really are truly excited, honored, happy, thrilled to start this project because it really is the next project for the terminal building. And as you mentioned, President Traverse, our North Concourse has gone through some changes over the last year or two. And one of the biggest changes that this project is going to bring is allow the flexibility, the space, not just in the interior of the building, but also the exterior for the size of aircraft that our airline partners are now offering at the airport. The true purpose of this entire project is to accomplish and accommodate the changes that are happening to our industry right now, which are larger aircraft. And this entire thought process of this terminal building is to build for that flexibility and build for those additional aircraft that are coming in. This project is 3 stories tall. It's approximately 25,000 square feet on the first and second floors. And truly the need is because of a very skinny, tiny hallway that goes to 2 of our airline partners, which serves about 60% of our passengers every single year. This will widen space, giving our passengers much needed hold room, as we call it, or seating space to access the aircraft. What's really exciting about this project, and as we designed for customer experience, which is of course a primary purpose of our design, we've also designed for sustainability, and Larry's going to talk about everything that we put into this project to make sure that we hit each element of our sustainable goals, both as a city and an airport.
All right, that's fine. All right, within the construction, we have geothermal wells, which will take care of the heating and cooling of the building. We've analyzed and are going to utilize mass timber versus steel. We'll still use some steel, but for the larger structure will be mass timber. And then there will also be solar availability on the roof. So about it.
And again, these are major goals of the airport to make sure that we're building the next portion of our terminal building for the future, and making sure that both geothermal heating and cooling of this building, mass timber, both from an aesthetics standpoint as well as from a sustainable standpoint, are all introduced into the terminal building for the very first time. One really exciting new addition to this terminal, to this building, is also going to be a third floor I mentioned. And this third floor is going to be a little bit smaller, but it's going to accommodate some pretty exciting things on the third floor. Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, we're really excited. We're going to be moving our offices to the third floor. I've been with the airport for a year, but I haven't had to move my office. My understanding is the leadership team has moved their office several times in the last decade, so we'll have a permanent fixture. And what I'm super excited about it is there will be a dedicated event space. We're going to have a patio that's going to bring back the nostalgia of the observation tower that is currently only accessible in this sterile area, so you have to be a passenger. That's been screened through TSA. This will be viewable for the general public. They can come throughout the day, go out on a patio, overlook the airfield, and we'll also have a dedicated event space where we're hoping to bring the community in for chamber mixers, some retreats, things of that nature at the airport. So we're really, really excited to get that up and running, and we already have people reaching out to book that space, so we're pretty excited.
And like Jeff said, this is an outdoor patio space on the second floor, very similar to our rooftop garden on the parking garage. This will be on the exterior looking westward toward the Green Mountains, towards Camel's Hump and Mount Mansfield, which took a significant amount of security procedures and protocols to get that approved. But it's a really exciting opportunity for those types of reasons that Jeff just mentioned. This before I get to the financial piece of it that Marie's going to talk about, this journey of this particular building, if you've flown in or out of the airport, you have seen that our newest terminal, which is on the south side of the building, was to accommodate a consolidated TSA checkpoint, a single checkpoint that introduced more capability, both from a security standpoint as well as the space to accommodate the quantity of passengers coming in and out of the airport. That project, which we call TIP, or the Terminal Integration Project, again on the south, was introduced and opened just a few years ago. And this project will take everything from that new building all the way north to our North Concourse. It'll open up our entire second floor, renovate the entire second floor of the building, open up space for additional concessions, opportunities that might come in the future, as well as give our passengers the experience and the viewpoint looking out to the west. You're going to go into the North Concourse, to the east, northeast, southwest, to the east. This walkway all the way from the south to the north will also go to the North Concourse, as you mentioned, President Traverse, which we just recently expanded and renovated. This will open up the side of that north side of the building to a large holdroom area, which will introduce 4 new gates into the terminal, again, to accommodate both the smallest and the largest aircraft. Not only do we look at sustainable products and processes as we are design this building, but we also looked at the capabilities of these jet bridges or parking spaces for aircraft. What does the future of aviation look like? Electric aviation is clearly in our backyard, with Beta Technologies developing that type of aircraft right here at the airport. So we want to make sure whatever that future of aircraft, whatever the future of air travel is, that we're able to accommodate that style, that type, that size, and that quantity of passengers that are going through this terminal building. This is a very large contract. In fact, this is one of the largest, if not the largest contract that we've had in the history of the airport. This is a large build. It's going to take time, very delicate balancing of phasing of this project so that we're not interfering with the daily operations of the aircraft. And I'll hand it off to Marie to go through the 3 requests that we're asking for tonight, as well as some of the financial pieces really quick.
Thank you, Nick. So this project we have 3 requests front of you tonight. And so one of them, we have a construction at risk managerial contract. We went through a competitive process where we selected this a contractor to manage the project. That has saved us significant dollars on the design, so it's been a very beneficial process. And it's also streamlined the process, the time that it takes to get through the design. And we have been very fortunate. So that is one of the asks, is to go ahead and sign the contract. As far as the funding side, we have a number of funding sources. Our largest funding source is congressional discretionary spending that we have is a $34 million congressional spending bill that we have money that has been dedicated to this project. And so that is a significant contribution to funding the project. We have other multiple sources. So there are, we call it ATP, which is Airport Terminal Project funding that we are eligible to request. And we have some additional congressional discretionary spending money that is now being talked about for some parts of the project as well. And we also have some bipartisan, some build infrastructure funding that we have available to us. And so we have all of these things sort of lined up as we go through and plan out the project. The funding that we have, these projects tend to be 90% federal money, and there are some elements of the project are not eligible as part, we call them non-eligible parts of the project. And these would be any spaces that you don't have like the public moving through. So a lot of the stuff in the terminal, the public is moving through to get forward or wait for the aircraft and move through to the aircraft. So those are eligible. There are some aspects like the part of our third floor, our space that we have, if it's going to be for the general public or if it's going to be for office space, is not eligible under some of these funding. But that is a small component of it. So we have the funding. With the 90% funding, the 10% we get about $500,000 from the state of Vermont each year toward our 6% grant match. And the rest of it, we can use whatever is not made up with that difference on that 10%, we can use and go after passenger facility charges, which is PFC. There's a $4.50 charge on every ticket that comes into Burlington, and those monies accumulate, and then we are able to request and spend those monies appropriately in a project such as this. The final ask on this particular memo is something called, we're requesting under a timber grant. This is the Northern Border Regional Commission. The airport is putting in about $3.6 million in mass timber. Larry touched and used that term. And it's better for the environment and it's better for the airport. So we've tried really, really hard to incorporate the things that we know are sustainable. And as we look toward building out anything that we do and spending money that we do at the airport. And so that timber grant that we've applied for, we don't know if we'll get it yet, but we were advanced to the final round to submit a formal application. And we're expecting to know in this week. I heard this week. So we're hoping that would be a $1.7, almost $1.8 million grant. So we're hopeful that we'll get that as part of all of this. So we've left no stone unturned in looking for ways to be fiscally responsible. It was more money to build some of the geothermal wells and things that we're doing. It's more expensive to do those up front, but we realize the importance of doing that. So we've done every effort to do all that we can and to fund it responsibly and spend those dollars well on behalf of the city.
So just to wrap it up, tonight we're here for those specifically 3 requests. If you, this is a new council, but back in March, we did receive authorization to accept that $34 million grant. We're not asking for that tonight. However, we're asking for the remaining pieces of this particular project. The entire contract amount with Engelberth Construction Company, approximately $7 million, almost $8 million with contingency for additional FAA funding and authorization to sign a grant with the Northern Border Regional Commission if we were able to get that. We do have a financial plan for this building, so regardless of how these unknown grants, specifically the Northern Border Regional Commission grant, we're able to fund many of the ineligible pieces with airport funds. We are not asking for the city taxpayers or anybody else for additional funding to build this new building because, which is pretty unheard of for a small hub airport, the majority of this project is federally funded. So thank you very much. I think there's a few minutes for questions, and we do have a presentation online. It's mostly pictorial and really showing the three-dimensional drawings of what this building looks like. At btv.aero, we have a separate section of the website specific to this project, so you can see a 3D walkthrough. The public can also see what this project is, what it's going, what the timing is, and of course some of the visuals that I just mentioned.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Thanks as well for the slides that you just referenced and the memo, which is online if folks want to check it out on Civic Clerk. Before turning to the motion, which is a three-part motion and relatively lengthy as motions go, I'll turn to councilors to see if you have any questions or comments. Councilor Kane.
Thanks for the presentation. So I'm trying to understand why we're doing this project. You guys presented some data in May that showed that we're the busiest airport, or second busiest in New England after Logan, busier than 10 other airports in the region. It seems to be the case, though, that the main motivation for this project is being able to receive larger, more modern planes, suggesting there might be an issue receiving, planes, and so I would expect we would not have the second highest airport operations per year relative to all these other regional airports. So I'm wondering, are these other airports doing this sort of project as well? I'm just having trouble understanding how and why we're behind.
I think we're very competitive in the realm of making sure that we're ready for the industry changes that are coming down the pipeline. Many other airports in New England, or some other airports in New England, have done upgrades to their terminal. I would say that the number of operations is not just commercial operations. The number that contributes to why we are the second busiest commercial service airport in New England is because of every type of aircraft, commercial service, military, general aviation, corporate aviation. This particular building has significant limitations today. It was originally built in the 1950s, and we've been adding onto it slowly. The section that we're going to be replacing is so small, and it was truly designed for an era of aircraft that held about 20 to 30 passengers per plane. Our average passengers for 2023 calendar year is now 91 passengers per plane. Many of them are higher. Of course, that's just an average number, 91. Some of them that are using this existing concourses are between 150 and 200 passengers per plane in a hallway that's about 10 feet wide. That's times 4 because there's 4 planes operating at once. So this truly is a constraint with passengers. It's a constraint with building code and fire code, and most significantly, it's a constraint with proximity to a taxiway. The size of aircraft, the length specifically of aircraft, are now not able to be parked at specific positions against this existing terminal, which is why this new terminal is away from our taxiway system. So it is truly the flexibility to accommodate existing aircraft fleet and the future of the changes that will occur with the industry.
Thank you. So is the maximum capacity for flights per day going to increase at the airport?
This is a replacement project. We are taking 4 gates and replacing those 4 gates with new gates.
And so the passenger volume per day, maximum passenger volume, is not going to change?
It could. These gates are able to accommodate the larger aircraft. So if airlines schedule those larger aircraft, they would be able to fit at these new gate positions. So therefore, yes, the increase in passengers, which is our goal to make sure that we can accommodate the demand of our market area. so that people aren't driving elsewhere and using the BTV airport, this project will be able to accommodate that demand for the market.
Do you have projections for how the demand will change? Like airport operations look like they're a little over 100,000 per year. Can you give me the percentage of airport operations that are commercial, and then how those commercial operations are projected to change with this concourse rebuild?
Yeah, great question. Specifically, commercial operations, they're actually decreasing. And they're decreasing because the quantity of flights that, let's say, particularly went to one destination are being decreased. Smaller aircraft that used to fly, doing multiple routes a day, are now being flown less times with larger aircraft. The seat capacity is still up at the airport, but generally the commercial operations are seeing a slow decline in number of operations. Now that could change very quickly, that changes with each airline schedule, but generally, if you asked me in 2008 what our average seat capacity was, it was less than 60. Today it's now 91, but the number of operations is also less.
Thank you.
Just last comment here, Councilor Kane.
Okay. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Kane. Any other councilors with comments or questions? Councilor Bergman?
I just want to ask about the local share. And I mean, I sort of understood it all, but at the end of the day, I'm looking for how, if we have to draw down from the funds ourselves that we have accumulated, where that's going to lead us or leave us, and how that relates to the fiscal health of the airport. We have had in the past times where, we've really gotten really low in those funds. It has caused bond issues, and I didn't see that, and I'm sure you have a good answer, so please.
So the passenger facility charges are actually held in a designated, restricted bank account. They are not commingled in any way with our airport operating. We cannot use them as we please. We have to have, we seek authority to impose the $4.50 passenger facility charge on tickets, and then we also have to seek authority to spend that money that's accumulated. So it has no bearing on our regular operating account, but it does, we are able to use it in this capacity in a project like this, which is, therefore doesn't drain our regular operating account.
And I'll just add, Councilor, too, not only is our PFC account extremely high because we forecasted projects of this magnitude, but our regular days cash on hand is also the highest it's ever been, including some of the federal funds that are still due to us. So the cash on hand at the airport is healthier than it's ever been, which would allow a project of this magnitude, not just the local share match for these grants, but also any of the ineligible pieces that goes towards it. And that's also another reason why we're thinking outside the box and trying to access other funds not associated with the FAA. And to my knowledge, this may be the first grant, or one of the first grants that the airports have received that is not an FAA grant to help with a project like this.
Okay. Thank you. Did I miss a slide that had those numbers or not? I mean, I might have. Or has that, just in terms of if you have, like a projection, if you had to pull down the passenger fee, what would that mean to, the health of that fund, for example?
Like decrease the
it would obviously decrease it because you'd be drawing on it, but that still could leave it be healthy. And I'm just wondering if I missed a slide with those numbers.
No,
and if I didn't, I'm good with going forward today, but I do think that in future presentations that just having that, I always say trust but verify, and it would be really helpful to have that, to have the particulars going forward. I've known Marie for a long time, and so the trust is there, but going forward, I would really appreciate us getting those numbers.
We can absolutely do that. In fact, Marie does an excellent job reporting monthly to our airport commission, so we can share that information, big picture information about this. I just want to say too that the PFC charges at $4.50 is not just for this project. This is for every single grant that the airport gets. We have 24 open grants, and we're about to open 6, maybe 7 additional grants this year. So the local share is collected with the PFC, and we fund 100% of some of our snow removal equipment, which, as you can imagine, it's not a regular piece of equipment. These are large dollar values for these pieces of equipment.
Well, I look forward to seeing those numbers, whether I can understand them or not. We'll find out.
And I appreciate that, and it's a great question. And I'll also say the PFC balance today is about $8.9 million.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The PFC, what is dedicated in that restricted account, is just under $9 million. So it's we're able to cover these projects adequately.
Great, thank you. No further.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. I next have Councilor Litwin and Councilor Broderick in the queue. Can I get a sense as to how many other councilors may have questions or comments after that? All right, so I think we'll try to keep it to Councilors Litwin and Broderick, and then Councilor Barlow, as chair of the two, I'll turn to you for motion. Councilor Litwin, the floor is yours.
Thanks, and thank you, Councilor Bergman, for asking those important questions. I appreciate that. The two questions I have are kind of small. One is the review, this sort of public viewing platform. It sounds unique. From what I've seen in my own travels around the country, especially post 9/11. So I'm just wondering what type of security review have you gone through, especially with the National Guard located there? Is everybody on board that needs to be DHS, TSA? And then again, what types of security protocols would you take with the public is my first question. And then, due to my time limitations, I'll add my second question. The incident that happened at the airport last week with the guard and the release of the firefighting fluid that had PFSAs or PS. I never remember the acronym for that. But when we're talking about accommodating larger aircraft, I start immediately thinking about kind of what went wrong, in my opinion, with some of the communications protocols. This council wasn't aware of that. I didn't get a notification. I can't speak for the mayor's office. I'm not clear if they were adequately notified, and only this morning did I find out from constituents about beach closures in my ward, warning folks about potential contamination and hazard. And so there are other players and other folks involved that need to be talked to, because this is a evolving situation. But when you bring up, we want to be ready for larger aircraft, I want to make sure that there's a plan to loop folks in who represent the people of this city, and so that we can be conduits for that information, and that we're doing so in an equity lensed way, so that people are getting the information in a variety of different ways. Folks with visual impairments can't see those signs. Folks where English is not their first language may need pictures to be able to bridge language gaps. And so I'm looking forward to having a conversation about better practices around that, but I would like to understand from the airport's perspective what role you think you play in letting city leaders know when an incident like that occurs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councilor. Quickly, the first question related to involvement of approvals for the third floor observation deck. This project would not be moving forward without full Department of Homeland Security and TSA involvement and final approval of that area. There will be security protocols set up on that third floor. It does overlook the ramp and the airport. We'll have limitations of hours, security camera footage, of course, our offices, the administration offices, are going to be up there as well. So you're going to have to check in to use that space. There is interior space that's going to be generally available 24/7 or just about 24/7. And that'll have conference room and other indoor event space that will be a little bit different. But yes, Department of Homeland Security and our tenants and our users were heavily involved with the concept of that third floor area. Related to the incident this past weekend, there's many elements to that question that I think might be suited for a better time, a longer period of time. Generally, I think the important piece of what we're talking about with larger aircraft and the response to any incident of those commercial large planes and the system used in a hangar are different. The system that failed over the weekend was a hangar suppression system, not a firefighting truck system that's used by the Air National Guard versus the Army. So there are different systems, there are different chemicals, and there are different requirements for both of those. We currently do have the capability and requirements that are held by the Vermont Air National Guard to respond to those larger aircraft using the required Federal Aviation Administration foam systems. And we'll continue to do that, of course, until the regulatory agencies adjust that protocol. I think the question is very large, and I'd be happy to set up a time with you or other counselors to discuss that. Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. We'll go to Councilor Broderick and then Councilor Barlow for a motion.
Thank you. This is pretty in line with what Councilor Kane was asking, and I'm sorry if this is a repeat. I just want a little more clarification on, so with this renovation and the introduction of larger aircraft into those gates, based off of the trends at our airport and the industry in general, so do you expect that while maybe the number of people coming in and out would increase, would the just purely the number of flights coming in and out of the airport, would that decrease based off of using larger planes and allowing those larger planes?
Our goals is to make sure that the demand of the market is met at our area. Right now, we don't meet that demand. In fact, many people within our region, within our county, drive to other airports to fly out, meaning there's a loss because we don't have the services. Do I believe that the increase of passengers is going to occur at Burlington? I hope so. We strive to make sure we meet that demand and respond to the market. The number of operations commercially, I do think, are being adjusted. The industry is changing. 10 years ago, regional carriers that were not owned and operated by the marketing carriers or the airlines that you see on the sides of the planes, they're smaller companies. That's changing. There are less and less regional carriers and less regional aircraft that are flying in the United States as a whole. They're going to what's called mainline aircraft, larger aircraft, but they are reducing the number of operations, not number of seats. Seats are climbing, seats are growing at this airport and many other airports throughout the country. However, those let's say two smaller aircraft are now being operated by a single larger aircraft. And I believe that's generally going to happen for the foreseeable future. That changes very quickly, though. It's very hard to forecast, and that's based on pilots in the market, how many pilots there are, how many qualified on each particular aircraft, as well as what these airline industry, airlines rather, are doing with their companies and how they're operating their companies. The goal of this project is to accommodate all of it, to make sure we're prepared for whatever happens in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I do understand the point of involving the demand. I'm just, I think, my question was answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Absent any other councilors in the queue, Councilor Grant, and then we'll go to a motion.
Thank you. So I want to say, I know there's definitely, we're always thinking about issues around climate, right, and emissions from the planes. I, as a person who actually, like right now I'm considering a flight, going to San Diego later this summer. So if I go to San Diego and I have very limited vacation time, I'm not driving to San Diego. I don't want to, there's emissions there if I drive. So obviously I'm going to want to fly. So there is that, concern, but at the same time, I am glad that we're being realistic in accommodating the fact that if we can get more people on a single plane and have fewer flights, I think ultimately that would be a good thing. And I do think it's, there have been times where it's not been easy to get to Burlington, especially for students. It's not been easy. It's been very cost prohibitive to get here. It's better now, but you still hear about how much some of these flights cost. So if we can get to a point where it can be more economically feasible for the airlines as well, that's important for us in terms of, because I don't want us to say we don't want more people coming, right? Because we want more people coming. So I just wanted.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Barlow, we have a three-part motion listed on Civic Clerk. Could I turn to you to list off all three parts?
If you must.
I must, yes.
Okay, thank you. I approve to authorize the Director of Aviation to execute a construction manager at risk contract with Engelberth Construction, Inc. in the amount of up to $47,931,525 with a 15% contingency totaling up to $55,121,253.80 as allowed by the grant for the construction of Project Next, North Concourse Replacement Project, subject to review and approval of the City Attorney's Office. And second, to approve and authorize the Director of Aviation to execute an additional grant from the Federal Aviation Administration to accept an amount up to $6,922,436 with a 15% contingency totaling up to $7,960,801.40 as allowed under the grant for design, construction manager at risk coordination and selection, pricing, construction inspection, and construction of the North Concourse Replacement Project. Project Next, Grant Application 2, subject to review by the City Attorney's Office. And third, to approve and accept and execute a Northern Borders Regional Commission grant in the amount of up to $1,778,400 for utilization of domestic mass timber construction materials in construction of the North Concourse Replacement Project, Project Next, subject to review by the City Attorney's Office.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barlow. Well done. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Councillor Litwin. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we will go to a vote. All in favor of the three-part motion as provided by Councillor Barlow, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Director Longo, and to the whole team.
Thank you all very much. Point of inquiry?
Yes.
If a
Councillor
counselor is missing during a vote, should that be noted? When we said unanimously?
It's unanimous of those voting.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Litwin. I will say that just a couple things that I found out with respect to our council rules. One is that if we do have a counselor online and the vote is not unanimous, the open meeting law in the state of Vermont will require that we do a roll call vote in that case. The other thing I found out in our council rules is that if everyone's here in person and the vote is not unanimous, that we either have to take hands or do a roll call vote to identify the nays in the room. And I didn't know that. The State House, they they say the ayes appear to have it, and that's that. But not here in City Hall. But on that point, it's unanimous among those voting. So thank you, Councilor Litwin. Item 6.2 is the budget with respect to FY25. Mayor Mulvaney-Stanek and CAO Shad, appreciate all the times you've been before this council and the Board of Finance to present on this leading up to tonight. But now the actual budget resolution is before us. And Mayor, I will turn the floor to you to present it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor President Travers. I'm going to go first, and then I'm going to hand it over to CAO Shad to just do a high-level review of where we landed to queue up this first action you have in front of you, item 6.2. I just want to first begin by saying I am very proud of this budget. It is a budget that begins very important multi-year work ahead of us to right-size this government so we can sustain the city's services in an affordable and strategic way for Burlington. It raises revenue in ways that keeps affordability in mind. It is balanced, and this budget had a $14.2 million gap in the end, and I'm particularly proud of working with all of my department heads, city councilors, and the community to close this gap, while we also found additional resources to increase investments in community safety, all within the first 3 months of my administration. I'm also particularly proud of I've consistently worked in good faith with city councilors right up until the end, and I'm particularly proud of this because I think that bodes well for a stronger local government where we can work through different opinions and approaches and find compromise, and then model that for this city. This budget is a community safety focused budget, and I'm particularly am proud and impressed that when you look at the entire budget, we have invested $4.6 million in additional investments over what we spent in fiscal year 24 spending on just community safety. And I really want to itemize what that means. $4.6 million is a significant investment in our general fund. It includes $2.47 million more in operating investments in our police department. It includes $1.4 million more in operating investments in the fire department. It fully funds in another year of the community response team, the CRT, that is operated through our fire department. It includes $150,000 because we listen to our library and their acute need right now for additional safety through private security, as well as a social worker for the library. It includes $50,000 for basic supports for unhoused people who are having to survive on public lands. And in your packet tonight, there's an itemized budget of how that $50,000 is proposed to be spent. It includes fully funding 11 community safety officers, which was an act of compromise with counselors, some of the counselors here, to make sure we have fully staffed community safety officers out of the gate on July 1st. It fully funds and fully staffs our firefighters up to the cap within that department. It includes funding for 10 more sworn officers within our police department, which was agreed upon with our leadership in the police department, that is what we can realistically hire. And if we find more officers along the way during the next fiscal year, we will hire more and find that money. And that gets us on the road to fully funding the officer cap of 87 sworn officers for our police department. And finally, it includes, I think, a very critical position within our community safety work ahead, which will be an advisor position in my office, which will be temporary for the next 2 years, to really help us break down silos in how we're doing our community safety. There are a lot of inefficiencies. We can do this better, we can do this smarter, and we can frankly, I think, have a bigger impact on our community if we are better coordinated. This budget also begins important work on some sustainability principles that I have talked a lot about throughout these last 2.5 months. It includes reducing a reliance on one-time funds, which is critically important for our ongoing work that we need to provide or services we provide as a city. It begins to right-size the city government by reducing the growth rate of the general fund expenditures. And I do want to note that in fiscal year 23, we had a 7% growth in our general fund. In fiscal year 24, we had a 9% growth in our our general fund. And this year, or the next fiscal year, we will go down to 7% growth. And this is an important direction for what we need to be doing more of going forward for fiscal year 26. We also diversified how to raise revenue to make sure that we are truly thinking about affordability. And that includes only using 2 cents of the 3-cent public safety tax, because that is a tax paid by residents and commercial property taxes. And to balance that out and diversify, we increase gross receipts because that is a consumption tax, and it helps to diversify, so it's not just on specifically the residents in this community to fund the important needs in our budget. This budget also includes other principles that I've talked long about around how do we engage our community, our city government, our staff, and what we'll continue to do in future budgets. This includes proactively communicating with our city unions and working in partnership to right-size our government and our structure by making sure that we do not fund unionized positions or any city staff positions for that matter with one-time funds, because it sets up a cliff for folks who are trying to make a living and trying to do good work, frankly, on behalf of the city when we don't have sustained revenue sources for those positions. It is a fair budget to our city employees because this budget did not include a single layoff for fiscal year 25, which is incredibly important knowing that we have structural challenges ahead of us. However, our employees deserve a fair process. In my administration, I want to make sure that working in partnership with them while respecting union contracts and the process for which we have to make some pretty hard decisions on how we structure our government ahead. I did not feel it was fair in the first 2 months or would be good process to make abrupt or unfair changes in staffing. I respect our union contracts that we have, and I am a union mayor, and I really want to make sure that our staff know I have their backs, and we should have a fair, open, and predictable process for how we decide to do any restructuring that will impact city employee positions. And finally, I've worked long and hard to collaborate with every city councilor around this table. I've worked with both caucuses to hear your input, incorporate your ideas, and work with due diligence and good faith to make sure that we were keeping a balanced budget at the end of the day. I even found extra resources to make sure I funded proposals you provided or ideas you provided to me from each of the caucuses. And finally, I just always want to end with gratitude to the hardworking staff we have. This budget process was a harder lift than most. They did all my department heads, the staff that work with them to create the budgets, worked extremely hard and long hours to make sure that we were looking under every rock, and I joked how we looked under every rock like 5 or 6 times to make sure we were finding savings, to make sure we were looking for where we could find efficiencies right now. We did more public presentations with the Board of Finance and City Council. We did more press conferences, and we did more proactive communications with constituents than has been done in the past practice on budgets. And I recognize the added burden that put on city staff. So I want to extend deep gratitude to every staff member who was part of this process. And a special thank you to our CAO, Catherine Shad, who I've never worked so closely with before, but we did a lot of hard work together. And she really has led our clerk treasurer's office with grace and humility through an especially challenging year with a high level of professionalism and leadership and problem solving in ways that I am just incredibly grateful for. So with that, I think it's a good cue and transition to you, CAO Shad.
Thank you very much, Mayor. It has certainly been one of the most challenging budget years that I have been a part of, but here we are. So, without further ado, the last budget presentation that you'll see from me this year. Every budget presentation, you have seen these principles. And that is the focus of this presentation, because instead of just having them as bullet points at the beginning of a presentation, these really did inform how we developed the budget, and I will show you the receipts on that as we proceed through this presentation. First, a quick look at how the general fund budget for FY25 compares to past years. We are coming in at just over $107 million. And you will see in terms of growth, that's just about 7%. And that is below the increases we've had over the past 2 years. So that is good news, and that does seem to be putting us in the right direction. This here shows the expected municipal tax rate of about 83 cents. And that is an 8-cent increase, or just over 10% from last year's rate. That includes the 2-cent increase to police and fire tax that was approved by voters, And what comprises the rest of that are increases required by charter or ordinance. Most of that is made up of the debt service tax and the retirement tax. This slide shows the estimated impact not only of the municipal tax increase, but also what we expect on the education side, and then factoring in the utilities as well. We spoke at our last meeting that the column in the middle, the $500,000 home, is closest to what the median price of a home here in Burlington is, which is $460-something thousand. I did not have that handy, but it is close to $500,000. Now, let's talk about how this budget reflects those principles. The first principle is the commitment to affordability for Burlington taxpayers. And with this one, you can really see that because we are only taxing residents on the 2 cents of the 3 cents that was voter approved. And then also, as I mentioned previously, reducing the rate of growth of the general fund budget, which will of course continue to be helpful over time. The second principle is ensuring we have sustainable financial practices, and as the mayor said, ensuring we move away from relying on one-time funds. We have spoken in these meetings about the user fee study that has informed this budget. That study showed that several of our fees were below market rates, and in some cases were not covering expenses. So in particular, a big thanks to our fire department, parks, and also city arts, who all made upward adjustments in their fees for this budget. I would like to draw everyone's attention to this last sentence, that as we do that, we are maintaining access for services for the residents who cannot afford those fees. The third principle is working to right-size city government. And here, what we have done in this budget is, I think most people know, we are holding 18 positions vacant for this year. That doesn't mean we won't ever fill them. It just means for the time being, we are holding them vacant. And that generates just over $1 million in savings. Looking forward, we will be implementing the operational efficiency study, and that will help us as this body to have a conversation, as well as the larger community and our staff, about what the size of each department should be, how it should be staffed now and in the future. The next principle is ensuring we're fair in raising new revenue across the community. And as I mentioned, since we're only implementing 2 of the 3 cents of the public safety tax, we are making up the difference of that by increasing the gross receipts tax. So first, increasing the local portion of the lodging tax from 2 to 4%. And really, some of the logic behind that is most Burlingtonians probably are not going to need a hotel in Burlington. So we assume that most of the people, the vast majority who will pay that hotel tax, will be visitors. Also, the non-lodging gross receipts tax, we will see that in meals, alcohol, and admissions. That will go up 0.5% from 2 to 2.5%. That's just for this fiscal year. And that's a consumption tax. So that is going to hit people who can afford the luxury of eating out. And then lastly, the budget really does reflect the priorities of our city, especially community safety. And these first few bullets are all things the mayor mentioned, so I won't repeat them. But we are very pleased, in addition to being able to put new money towards community safety, that we are able to retain city services, avoid layoffs, and really slow the growth of the budget. So as we look ahead to FY '26, we are going to have a meeting of all of our department heads and some others in the clerk treasurer's office at the end of August to begin our FY '26 planning. My office is already doing some work on that, but that will be the earliest that we've ever convened the city leadership team to begin working on the next fiscal year's budget. We will also, over this fiscal year, be engaging in those discussions on the operational efficiency analysis, as well as we have made some changes to user fees, as I mentioned, and we'll want to monitor the effects on those to see if they're having the effects we want, bringing in increased fees without causing people to turn away from those services. We are actively investigating non-property tax sources of revenue. And as we started last week at Board of Finance with a monthly report on revenues and expenses, that will continue with a special focus on gross receipts and user fees so we can adjust as needed and plan for FY '26. And that is it. So I will turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, CAO Shad. Can I get a show of hands of counselors as to who has any questions or comments on this item? Counselor?
It's really a point of information as to whether you want to have that conversation happen before you introduce the, a motion to have.
Doesn't necessarily have to happen in any particular order, but I had asked Councillor Kane perhaps to introduce a motion here. And Councillor Kane, if you were prepared to do that with respect to the posted budget resolution, I'd be happy to turn to you now.
Sure. I would move to waive the reading and adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Kane. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councillor Carpenter. Councillor Kane, do you want the floor back, or you can also get in the queue later?
Sure. Just briefly, if that's all right.
Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Kane, then Councillor Bergman, you're up next. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Kane.
Thanks. I'd just like to make a couple quick comments about the budget. I am astounded that nobody was laid off. I am impressed with the creative thinking to use the gross receipts and not use the full 3 cents authorized towards the property tax. I'm impressed with the thoughtfulness around community safety, breaking down silos, investing in breaking down silos, taking a careful look at overtime, hiring and retention bonuses in the police department, recognizing the humanity in the homeless. While it's easy to nitpick the budget, and I am guilty of that, and I apologize, Mayor, when you zoom out at all, like, the budget is very thoughtfully crafted and should not be, none of those things I just referenced should be taken for granted. Moving forward, I want to just say that I look forward to getting an early start on the budget for this next year. I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of revenues, from parking subsidies in all their forms, to the regressive property tax, to the vacancy tax, which should be escalating. And I'm excited to work on the revenue side of things so that we can start to think more next year about new expenditures. For instance, I'm really excited about publicly funded elections. And so, it was hard to get any new expenditures through during this very difficult budget situation. Hopefully, we all work hard together to be able to do some new things next year on the expenditure side. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kane. I appreciate your work on this as a member of the Board of Finance. Councillor Bergman will turn to you, and then to Councillors Litwin and then Barlow.
Thank you, President Travers. First, I want to thank the mayor and the CAO and all the department heads and people who participated in the budget process. I also want to thank my colleagues across the table. I use a different word than aisle. And because this was appropriately moved in a bipartisan way, and it reflects that bipartisan commitment to the health and welfare of the city. You know, I've been around this table for a really long time, and on the other side of the barrier there for even longer. And I have to say that this budget reminds me of the hardest budgets that I've seen over the years. It reminded me of Bernie's first budget, except that the gross receipts tax was not available to him, and it took his leadership to get that to be enacted, and that is very, very significant. Our ability to use progressive alternatives to a regressive property tax is essential. We see that here. We heard the call for tax relief from an Old North End landlord tonight, and I just am very happy to see that this is the first down payment on progressive tax relief and reform. And I really look forward to working across the table and with the administration in the coming year, as Councillor Kane said, to work on those things. The other aspect, you all have heard me talk about austerity and the problems that go with austerity. We will not cut our way to a healthy city. We will not make life affordable for poor and working people by slashing things like our parks and our streets and all the things that we need, the police and the fire. So affordability is something that we absolutely need to address without going into the black hole of austerity. And I'm really happy that this budget does not do that, despite the fact that we're holding 18 positions open. And we all know how hard people are working in our departments and how stretched they are. And I don't really think, although I'm really looking forward to the review of the city, that we've got lots of fat in town. We have needs. Is that my time? That's not my time, right?
That is not your time.
Thank you. That's good. I'm going to be done sooner than you all expect. You know, some of the things that we're doing here, and we've mentioned public safety, but let's not forget that we're funding CHT projects at Cambrian Rise and the old VFW, and that is essential for not only our homeless population, but our low and moderate income folks. We've made a commitment to climate change and have funded the things that we committed to in the McNeil District Energy resolution last year to reduce emissions. And I wouldn't put it past nature to be flooding us in the next week if we continue to get rains. Anybody who goes down the Winooski River today will see that it has risen significantly. We've started to make a commitment to building the workforce to weatherize. So when we heard earlier about the TOOC and the review of those programs, this budget goes to that effort. And we've got an awful lot more that we've got to do. This is obviously not a perfect budget, but it is, as I said, a down payment. It's a down payment that works to keep the lake clean and make our roads and sidewalks safe and keep the park safe and green and fun, and to have arts and culture for everybody and not just a privileged few, and to keep the waterfront for all the people. And to me, it is non-negotiable to be doing all those things. So I am very happy to support a budget that does that, and I look forward in the next year to building an even more affordable and sustainable budget with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. I have Councilor Litwin, and then Barlow, and then Broderick.
Thanks. I also want to thank the mayor who walked into a difficult budgeting situation and has done so thoughtfully and attended our caucus and spoke to us and worked with us and listened to our concerns about the initial proposal. I would say that, no one gets a perfect budget, the budget that they want. I think probably on either side of the table. And so certainly there are some things that I can live with, though. But I do have one question. But first, I just want to say that, to Councilor Bergman's comments, that we won't reach a healthy city and affordability through slashing, governments and austerity. I would equally ask us to think about, we won't, make Burlington affordable through government largesse. And so I do have a question about whether or not, I see that the 6.9% increase is lower on average than the last 2 fiscal years, but I would question whether that is heading in the right direction. I actually would say it's just going to make FY26 that much harder, and we will have to make really incredibly difficult decisions, and some services may need to be cut. We may not be able to be the full-service city that we're used to being. It may not be fat, as Councilor Bergman mentioned, that we have to cut. And so the efficiency study, I'm looking forward to seeing that, and the possible $3 million in magical savings that may exist in there. But ultimately, I think this council, and certainly I am, prepared to see that number go far below. And it is unfortunate, but that is the reality. And additionally, some of those things that are mentioned, like the Cambrian Rise investment of $1 million, is out of ARPA money. And so I'll leave that there. And then the last question is actually a question for CAO Shad. I appreciated the FY26 slide that you had. I think you're right. It is heading in the right direction in that sense, and I really appreciate that overview. In a previous meeting, you brought up finding money through collections, and I think it was Councilor Doherty who made the comment of sometimes the people who don't pay, which I found charming. And so I wondered if, as part of that Board of Finance updates, you're going to be also updating on the status of collections, the efforts that are being made there, and whether that's successful or not.
Excellent question. Yes, that will be part of the monthly review, which is a quite comprehensive review, and that we will make sure, if there is interest, that we call out those accounts receivable in particular. So we can do that.
Thanks, I'm all set.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, President Travers. I too am grateful to CAO Shad and the city team for all the hard work that went into budget development and the refinement process. And I also very much appreciate the willing collaboration by the mayor and the administration to address our caucus's desire to add more resources to public safety and for the Department of Permitting and Inspections. I will be supporting the budget. It's unquestionably a difficult one, and I expect the FY26 budget to be even more challenging. We don't have the completed operational analysis to inform cost savings in this budget, but I'm hoping that we can continue to commit to lessening the difficulty of future budgets by implementing any recommendations of that study as soon as we can and not waiting until the next budget development cycle. I do have a couple of comments on the budget memo as well that I'd like to offer, and hopefully they're not too nitpicky. The first is in regard to the continued framing of the budget gap at 13.1 million and more recently at 14.2 million upon discovery of the grand list miscalculation. I indicated at the Board of Finance back in May, in subsequent discussions with the CAO and the Finance Director, that I don't agree with this characterization. A budget gap should only contain those expenses for which there is no revenue to cover, and that's why we call it a gap. The retirement and debt service increases should not be considered part of the gap calculation and never had been considered part of the gap calculation before the current administration started doing so. Retirement and debt service increases should not be included because the increased expenses are covered by increased revenue triggered by automatic adjustments to those two tax rates. There is no gap for these expenses, and no work is required to find additional revenue to cover those increased expenses. As a result, I believe the gap is overstated by $2.73 million, or about 24% higher than it actually is. And as a member of the Board of Finance and the only member who was on the board at the start of the budget development process, I feel it's important for me to continue to point this out. And I understand others disagree with me, and I respect those opinions as well. And my second comment with regard to the memo is that I don't think any of us at this table, including Councilor Shannon, who put forward a comprehensive public safety plan during the mayoral campaign, think that simply increasing sworn officer count is all we need to do in Burlington to address our public safety crisis. I believe we all understand that hiring those additional sworn officers is critically necessary, but not sufficient to solve this complex problem. And I also believe that the budget we have worked on together and hopefully have a unanimous vote on tonight reflects that understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor Broderick, and then Councilor Grant.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor and everyone, including all my colleagues who helped work to put this budget together. I just wanted to say that through all the conversation, both since we started this budget process and before that, during last campaigning season, all the talks of school budgets and tax increases and whether or not we should use all of the voter-authorized public safety tax and affordability, it continues to reveal the truth, in my opinion, to me, that we need to radically change how we generate revenue as a city via taxes. Using a regressive model only serves to negatively impact those at the bottom. And of course, this is not something the city can do unilaterally. So I hope over the coming years and even the coming months that we put a lot of thought into changing how we generate revenue and to create a consistent stream of revenue via taxes that does not negatively impact the lowest in society as it currently does, as well as allow us to not have to cut services and do layoffs if it comes to that in the future. Because yes, the next year, the next budget is going to be difficult, as this one was very difficult. So instead of resting on what we have done and looking on how we can downsize what we have, I think we should be looking on how we can continue to increase revenue in our city and do it in a way that is equitable and that allows everyone in the city to feel supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Councilor Grant.
Thank you. I have a few things to say. So, first of all, I want to thank the mayor and CAO Shad for their transparency. I think this process has been very transparent in terms of speaking with the council members as well as communicating with the public. And even so, people are still not listening. So once again, I encourage people to actually watch meetings and read minutes. And if you have not subscribed to the mayor's email, please do so because it's really important. Regarding the efficiency study, the mayor has said several times that this is going to be crucial to be reviewed during the upcoming year, and I believe that the mayor has stated several times that this will be a study once we have the final version. It won't be just lying around. We're going to be starting to look at this as soon as possible so that we can really have a plan in place for the next fiscal year, or FY 26. So I think this has been very clear and discussed a number of times. I think we have to be very careful when we talk about things like how big our government is. If we had had this study earlier, I would have liked to think that we would have been looking at it earlier in order to have some sort of impact for FY25, but that unfortunately didn't happen. So we'll be looking at that. We will have, contract negotiations coming before we know it. So all of that will be important as well. I do appreciate, especially being as a Central District City Councilor, I am hearing from residents all the time. I am downtown all the time. I am seeing what is going on, and I have grave concerns, just like a lot of other people. But I really want us to have a real, to really be looking at how we're spending the money and to make sure that the money that we are putting in to public safety, we are tracking how it is being used, and that we are making sure that the funds are being held accountable. Like, where are they going? Because in terms of looking at the number of sworn officers that we have, we are no better off this year than we were last year. And that is not something that the people of Burlington were expecting. We can't just blink our eyes and have officers and CSOs. So really addressing retention in an honest way, being unified as a council to look at this. I get really stunned when people mention that they haven't necessarily heard this talked about before. I've actually been talking about it ad nauseum. So it is something really important that we need to just be doing a better job of, to be making sure that the money that we're spending, the money that the people of Burlington are giving us and our visitors are giving us, that it is being spent appropriately, and we are tracking what is the results of those expenditures. Because if we're not getting the results, then we have to look at doing something different. We really can't afford to be funding things that are not working at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. I next have Councilor Shannon and then Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you, President Travers. I want to thank the mayor and CAO Shad, as well as Chief of Staff Aaron Jacobson, for working with myself and others at this table to restore the CSO positions, funding for recruitment, and for the housing administrator that were not in earlier proposals. And I will say that that process felt really good. It felt sincere, and I'm appreciative of your work with us on that. I also want to note that despite the messaging from some that there is not and has never been a budget deficit. There was never an inheritance from the prior administration of the city spending more money than we took in revenue. I don't believe we can even do that by charter. And so there isn't a budget deficit, but there was a very substantial budget gap. There's always a budget gap. This year's was larger than is typical, and it's understandable because after going through COVID, we were able to access a lot of one-time money, and it was very important for the city to access that one-time money. And we always knew it was going to have to wind down, and we always knew the winding down was going to be really hard. Mayor Mulvaney Stanek, you inherited that job, and I appreciate the hard work that you did to do it in a way that I don't think has really caused a whole lot of pain. I think that our priorities have been supported in this budget. And I also think that this, as you've noted and others around the table have noted, the work is not done. Next year's too is going to be really hard. And I think that we're on good footing to do that work collaboratively going forward. I'll also note that there is Councilor Barlow pointed out, the retirement, the increase in the cost of retirement has never been considered part of the gap because there isn't anything we do to solve that problem other than increase that line item on the taxes. However, it would be good to know going forward what is driving that and to better understand how we got to where we are with the retirement benefit. And I appreciate the forward-looking budgeting process that we're about to embark on. And I think that as part of that, it's going to be important to include that for our more holistic view of impacts to the taxpayers. So thank you all, and thank you to the city staff, department heads, and everyone around this table.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Councilor Carpenter?
Thank you. And I too truly want to thank the mayor and the CAO and all of the staff for all of the hard work and, of course, my colleagues' input. My sort of parting remarks are we've got a budget. It's going to work for this year. We know next year is going to be tough. And as the mayor pointed out, part of that is our highest priority being driven by public safety. Embedded in that, as we all know here in Burlington, are the things that have been layered on the city to take up kind of whether we want it or not. I mean, increasing and sustaining the fire department's CRT program. Absolutely had to do that. Your special initiatives, Mayor, around the library and a safety advisor and, health and safety for the homeless, we had to do that. Some of it will get paid for with opioid money, we hope. Some of it will get paid for with grants. But my ask is that we keep, I hate to say this, a little separate set of books, on the financial burdens this has put on the city of Burlington. We need to get that out to our neighbors. Our neighboring towns who are considering budgets just like we are tonight do not have those items in their line items. They're not taking their general fund money and having to pay those things. And we as a city, I think, just need to get that out that more and understand, or have our neighbors understand, and really the state understand what that burden is for us on a very specific financial basis, because it's not just the pain and hurt around us, it's those things cost us money, and I want to be able to say that to my neighbors in other towns. And again, I know you're thinking about that, and I know you're working hard on it, but I just think we have to continue to be fairly public about it so that people understand how that has affected us. So again, thank you for all the work.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. I have Councilor Newbeezer, and that's the last councilor in queue. Councilor Newbeezer.
Well, first, let me thank the mayor, my colleagues on the council, CEO Shad, and all of our city staff for their immensely impressive and important work over the last number of months. I first learned about, and I'll describe it as a gap, a multi-million-dollar gap, from residents and city staff during the last administration when I was knocking doors, and it was deeply concerning. And so I'm just thoroughly grateful for the administration, not for just talking the talk as they develop this budget on public safety and affordability, but really walking the walk. Without going off on too much of an aside, when I was out knocking doors, I got multiple questions on, I want to vote with the progressive for mayor. I want to vote for you, Carter. You seem like a nice guy, but I don't know. Like, how are you really going to govern? And I think if anybody was wondering how progressives govern, this budget is what it looks like. Transparency and honest process, long-term planning for financial stability, bipartisanship, and really an unapologetic focus on the needs of working people and the middle class. Burlington is without a doubt in a new era of leadership. My favorite parts of this budget invests holistically in public safety, meaning police, CSLs, CSOs, harm reduction, and public health, closes an over $14 million budget gap, which this new government inherited, ensures that we share the financial burden of balancing the budget as fairly as we can with an eye on affordability, decreases our reliance on one-time funds as a measure to cover ongoing costs, and ensures that residents can rely on basic city services delivered without interruption. And maybe not best for last, but certainly a pretty amazing feature, does not lay off a single city worker. It accomplished all of these feats through a process that was transparent, again bipartisan, and leveraged the expertise of subject matter experts, city staff, and community members. As others have mentioned, there's a lot of work ahead, and moving forward, I want to make sure that my constituents understand that I'm committed to pursuing further tax fairness reforms to lower the cost of living in Burlington for working families, middle-class families, renters, and those on a fixed income. And just one more sentence, working with the mayor.
You have time, Councilor Newbeezer. That was just on the overall motion.
Okay, I was
not your individual time.
I had two more sentences.
Okay.
I lied. Working with the mayor and moving forward, I'm still committed to working with the mayor and my colleagues on the council to find efficiencies in city government to ensure that every dollar, as folks have mentioned, that we ask residents to pay in taxes is stretched as far as we can stretch it. And finally, I'm deeply committed to doing anything that I can to pressure our governor and our legislative leaders in Montpelier to properly invest in our community's needs. I'd really like to see the governor actually come to Burlington and see firsthand the challenges and successes that residents are facing and our community are facing. And I'll wrap up by just saying, on a personal note, as someone who is a father who wants to see his kids be able to live in the community, or at least have the opportunity to live in the community they're growing up in, as someone who is, I was looking at that chart closely when I saw this agenda come out, because I am deeply concerned about my family's property tax bill, as I know my partner is. And as someone who has spent my entire adult and professional life trying to advocate for working people in our planet, this budget is the first that I've seen in a long time that takes that focus. So thank you, Mayor, and I look forward to working with all of you in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. Are there any other councilors with a comment? If not, I will turn it back to the mayor for the last word. Mayor?
Thank you, Council President. First of all, I do appreciate and I take it seriously your reflections, and I have all for these last several weeks. I think it is an important sign when we can also extend gratitude not only to city staff but to each other as colleagues as going forward. And I really do hope that that sets a new tone for this government going forward, because that will be the best service we can provide the city. So let's keep doing this and keep that focus as we go forward. There's one small piece I just wanted to address from the comments made by councilors, and it was just specific to the retirement debt service piece of it. I think we all have different approaches, but one piece I just want to name because it's important, and even myself as a taxpayer for most of the 20 years that I've lived here, it's not clear how that really plays into the bottom line of a tax bill for most folks. I think if you surveyed most people in Burlington, they would have no clue how that gets determined, what the calculation is. And I think it was important to me to make sure that this was a full package presentation to taxpayers. And whether it's counted as a gap or not, or how it's displayed, I think the most important thing is that we continue to be transparent, find ways that we can make sure that the general public, especially busy working people, can understand how we're spending their money and what are those drivers behind the tax rate. And we can continue to make sure that I'm hoping that whatever the next administration is, hopefully long into the future, but even during my time, that we create standard definitions and ways we present the budget that becomes a nonpartisan and predictable way that every year in Burlington, you know what your tax bill is, and you know what the income sensitized components are for our utilities, for our tax rates, maybe someday from the municipal side of the tax bill as well. And so this is part of that larger public education piece, and I'm confident that we will find that as a new common project together to advance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. If there are no other comments or questions, then I think we will go to a vote on the motion made by Councillor Kane. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. We now have our FY25 budget. The next two items are how we pay for it. So we turn to item 6.3, a resolution regarding annual tax assessments. And Mayor, I will turn to you and CAO Shad on this item first.
Yes, as I said in Board of Finance, and as you just said, this tax resolution is something that we need to do so that we can pay for the budget. It takes that chart that I showed in the PowerPoint where it breaks down our municipal tax into each of what we call the splinter taxes. So the appropriate funds go to penny for parks, the library, the highway, and all of that, and does that in words. So that is what we are about to vote on next.
Thank you, CAO Shad. The recommended action on this item is to waive the reading and adopt the resolution. Before turning to any questions or comments from councilors, could I ask for a motion along those lines? Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Is there any councilor with questions or comments on this item, 6.3? Seeing none, we will go to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. That takes us to the last item on our deliberative agenda, which is item 6.4, an ordinance regarding gross receipts. On this item, I turn to the chair of the Ordinance Committee, Councilor Shannon.
Thank you, President Travers. I move to waive the reading, suspend the rules, adopt the amendment to Chapter 21, Section 31 of the Burlington Code of Ordinances as detailed in the ordinance that is labeled as referred by the Ordinance Committee and sponsored by the Ordinance Committee, and place the amendment in all stages of passage.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Shannon. And to confirm, I know there are two versions of this, and you are moving the version that was referred from the Ordinance Committee, correct?
Correct, and I'll ask for the floor back after a second.
Great. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Councilor Shannon, I'll give you the floor back.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get to my documents here. The Ordinance Committee reviewed a version of this prior to us having the benefit of much of the subsequent discussion around the budget. And there were a couple things that we, or some of us, wanted to include to assure that we would still have the public safety that our constituents expect, and we decided not to include that in the ordinance that's before you and wait to see if we could work that out with the mayor, which we subsequently did, and I thank the mayor for that. In addition, it was, we made amendments to sunset the, both the 0.5% gross receipts tax increase as well as the 0.2% or the 2% gross receipts tax increase after a year. And in those discussions subsequently with the mayor, we agreed in order to get some of the other things, we agreed to not sunset the hotel tax, as well as to not include in the ordinance the reporting requirement on the gross receipts tax. The reason for that was the mayor agreed that we could get monthly reporting, that it would be included in the budget, and that we didn't need to have that in the ordinance, which is fine. And we appreciate that. So with that, I wanted the work of the Ordinance Committee to come forward to this council But also, I wanted to offer the amendment that's consistent with the discussions that we had with the mayor's office, that allows this all to go forward as we agreed. And you will find the amendments to this in what is labeled the recommended ordinance. That is a tracked changes document that makes the changes that I just noted. That the hotel tax will not be a temporary rate and will not sunset. The 0.5% on the gross receipts will still sunset next year and have to be reviewed again. And the reporting requirement is no longer in this ordinance with the amendments I am now proposing as seen in what is labeled the recommended version. So I will make that amendment and ask for a second to that amendment, or if it's friendly to the seconder.
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you, Councilor Shannon. First, a learning moment for me. I'll turn to the city attorney. Is it appropriate for the maker of the motion to amend their own motion?
It is appropriate with the consent of the seconder.
Okay. Thank you, City Attorney McNeil. Councilor Shannon, I'm assuming your amendment is friendly to you, so I will turn to the seconder, which was Councilor McKnight. Is the amendment friendly to you as well, Councilor McKnight? Great. So then, given that this is a friendly amendment, the matter now before the council is the version of the gross receipts ordinance as posted as the recommended version. And Councilor Shannon, did you wish for the floor back?
No, I'll just say thank you to my fellow ordinance committee members for working diligently, to Councilor Bergman for bringing this forward, because it's important that we get these taxes in place in order to raise the revenue that is expected in our budget. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Are there any other councilors with questions or comments on this item? Councilor Bergman.
Just very briefly, I just want to make it clear that I will be pushing for an end to the sunsetting of the meals and entertainment aspect of this. I have always thought it was not a good idea, but I actually was the original proposer of it because of the resistance to it in the first place and a desire to at least have us do what we could and should in this year. And I think that the upcoming year will be instructive to us, and I anticipate, although you never know, anticipate that we should and will eliminate the sunset on that. So I thank you for getting it back to the place that I thought we were at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. CAO Shad.
I do have one point of clarification that is not in the memo, and that is an important one for all of you, the media, everyone listening, to know that assuming this is passed, it will go into effect on August 1st. We were working to have it take effect in the middle of August, but that causes, July, thank you, Mayor. But that would cause a lot of administrative burden, not only for the city, but for the businesses to have to collect a different rate within the same month. So we've made that decision, and so we'll get the word out, and if you could help us, that would be great.
Thank you for that important clarification. Any other councilors with questions or comments on this item? Councilor Kane, and then Newbeezer, and then McKnight.
Thanks. Just to follow up on what Councilor Bergman said, I am confused why there would be a sunset to any part of the gross receipts. The property taxes are going up by, close to like $1,000 a year for the average household. We're talking about a $1 increase, a $1 increase on a $200 meal, something that people don't have to go out to do, and just so much smaller in magnitude. The property tax increase, will not go away next year. In fact, it'll get worse, due to the projections related to the state education system. So homeowners are feeling, are going to feel a world of hurt later this summer with property tax payments, and will continue to for the foreseeable future. So I am not sure why we're doing any sunsetting of any part of the gross receipts tax. It makes me uncomfortable. I would be at a loss to explain it to a constituent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kane. Councilor Newbeezer.
I was actually pointing to Councilor McKnight because she had her hand up.
Yes.
I'm still debating if I'm going to make comments.
Pointing at Councilor McKnight. Councilor McKnight.
Thank you. And I want to echo my colleagues or everyone at the table's thanks to the overall budget approach here. I think I didn't know what to expect going into this. I didn't know how the negotiation would work, and if we asked for things, would we get them? And I was happy to hear the answer was yes. And that includes the discussion on the gross receipts tax. And I agree it was a really creative approach and the right choice in terms of spreading out the tax burden and shifting some of that away from property taxes. Kind of zooming out from there, as a new city councilor, I was really curious about what topics folks would be reaching out to me on, what I would be hearing about most from constituents. And interestingly, it's actually been something that's not even technically happening in my ward, and that topic is really the escalation of the unlawfulness in our downtown. We heard about this from Ryan Nick in public comment today, and while in my opinion, and I know many others share this, our downtown is still very undeniably a cool, fun place to be, and I love going there. I spend a lot of time there with my kids. There is also some frightening, tragic, and really downright disgusting behavior taking place, particularly if you're employed at, own, or try to shop at a business. And I think we're really in a sort of houses on fire situation here. What we're hearing from when we meet and we get emails and phone calls from the business community is really shocking and unacceptable, from the moment you park your car to walking by the library to watching brazen shoplifters run out of the store you're in with thousands of dollars worth of goods, to stumbling over needles and human feces. People working and going downtown are seeing this every day, and I'm going to tie this back to the gross receipts tax, I promise. Also, when they call for help, they're told there's nothing we can do. They send emails and they don't always get answered. So the point I'm making here is I think this tax is a good idea. If it's even going to have a fighting chance, we need to fix what is going on downtown, because we're putting the city in a situation where we are reliant on a healthy downtown economy for a significant part of our budget. And I really want it to work, but it won't work if we don't do something about this, all of us. So I wanted to just make that point. And then CO Shad, a point of information about the change you shared. Should we further amend the amended version of this ordinance to add August 1st, to add that edit?
I consulted with Assistant City Attorney Eric, whose last name I'm still struggling with. Sorry, Eric, I know you're listening. Thank you. Ramakrishnan, yes. And people can get shot. You can get Ramakrishnan. It's not that hard. So he let me know we do not need to amend the ordinance. What we will do is it needs to be published, and we publish it in 7 days for 3 weeks. And so instead of publishing it this Wednesday, we will simply delay that publishing.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Any other councilors with, yep, back to you, Councilor Newbeezer.
I'm sorry.
And then Councilor Grant.
I did end up wanting to speak. just a few things, just so that my constituents know where I stand on it. I will be supporting this. I do agree with the concerns around sunsetting either one of these gross receipts tax. I think, to my mind, we're already facing a tough FY26, or we know we will be, and that's why I'm glad we're getting to work immediately on it. But it seems to me that it has the potential to set us up for a larger fiscal cliff in 26. And so I will be supporting it because that's the beautiful thing about democracy. We all get a piece and we all lose a piece and we pass something together. The final piece I just want to say, I would echo Councillor McKnight's sentiment that certainly we have issues on Church Street and businesses need support. That being said, I do want to just throw out good news as well, because I feel like sometimes we get down on ourselves as a city. I can share this around, and I don't have the most up-to-date data, but in 2023, according to city data, daily foot traffic in the first 8 months, this is according to VT Digger, and I think it's data from Church Street Marketplace directly, foot traffic on Church Street was actually on par with the 3 years previous to COVID. And so I think, yes, part of this is public safety challenges. For me, the more concerning piece is people aren't spending money downtown because they don't have enough money in disposable income to do so. And our downtown over the last number of years has been geared to tourists rather than residents. And so I think if that's the direction that we're in, we ought to make sure that those tourists pay into the pot to make sure that we can meet the needs of our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Newby. Does any other councillor wish to make a comment on this? Yes, we'll go back. Well, sorry, we had Councillor Grant and then Councillor Shannon. We'll turn back to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I had something to say, and then I just wanted to follow up on what was just said. The data about the foot traffic, some of our local businesses have expressed concerns because they feel that data is being weaponized against them. And this is something that I've been thinking about the last few days, is a comment that I heard last week, because we do have this issue that we've pushed primarily a tourist-based market outside of the coffee shops and the restaurants, and the dramatic increase in rents that we've seen in the last few years. People literally, my kid's 29, and he's like, there is no place for me to buy clothes downtown. He goes to visit his grandmother in New York, and that's where he shops for clothes. So I think we have to somehow look at that. I don't know how we change that, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I have been a police commissioner before becoming a city councilor, so I've really lived this stuff for the last pretty much 5 years now. And what was really dramatic in the historic North End was that we were dealing with the drug crisis and we could not get help. We could not get help. I literally watched this spread and expose. There are meetings after meetings after meetings where I am saying repeatedly, we don't have a plan. I am very thankful for the new administration. They are addressing things that have not been addressed and were, quite frankly, ignored. And we have to continue to have the faith in the new administration that they will continue to do that, including holding our police department accountable with regards to some things that are not happening right now, and also the lack of thinking outside of the box. This is really affecting our businesses, and it's really affecting our residents as well. So we really have to be united together, and we have to listen to each other. I have really felt at times that that my voice and the voice of the residents in my district went ignored, and it's only become this huge thing because now it's directly affecting downtown. And of course, I care about downtown. I've been in the alleys, I've been to businesses, I've talked to businesses, I talked to people that are out there trying to prevent the shoplifting. Police aren't available, so they're doing it themselves. people want to call them vigilantes, but they're not vigilantes. I mean, they're just pushed to the boundary of what can they do, and with the lack of police presence. So we really have to be honest that we need to push the department to think more out of the box. We have to be looking at recruitment and retention, and not make this a political issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Shannon, did you want the floor back?
Yeah, just briefly, thank you. Just want to clarify that the sunsetting on the gross receipts tax was not a change made by the committee or anyone else. It's how it was proposed by the mayor, and we didn't change it. And as far as downtown, I don't think anybody would dispute that if we want to maximize our gross receipts, we need to be in partnership with the businesses downtown. We need to improve the environment downtown because it needs to be inviting, and you can't have people stealing items from your store all day long because they don't pay gross receipts. And then those items can't be sold to somebody who does pay gross receipts. The problem is real, and it shouldn't be dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Does any other councilor wish to be recognized on this item? Yes, Councilor Kane.
Thanks. I just want to echo some comments that Councilor Newbeeser mentioned that I think Councilor Shannon might be referencing when she's saying that safety issues are being dismissed. Councilor Newbeeser raises a really important point that people in Burlington, people particularly in the downtown area don't have money to shop on Church Street, don't have money to shop in our downtown. This is something that Councilor Grant has brought up repeatedly as well. And we have, a tax system that is on fire with inequities. There was a presentation in January at the Board of Finance by Joe Minicozzi of Urban 3, highlighting that the tax assessments have like a 25 percentage point gap in terms of the appraised value to market value of homes in different neighborhoods in this city. And that adds up to like $1,000 to $3,000 like per property per year. We're talking about on the order of $5 a day that the residents of King Maple, the residents of the Old North End are robbed of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Kane. Does any other councilor wish to be recognized on this item? Seeing no one, we'll go to, Councilor Barlow. I'll give you the last word.
Yes, I wasn't going to speak. I just want to remind people that it's on. That for property owners who are also businesses downtown, whether we assess a property tax or a gross receipts tax, it's going to be an increase to them. So they're getting it from both sides. So a business like Outdoor Gear owns the building, and they have a business operating there. So I just want to be mindful of that, that it's not an either or for some of our taxpayers, it's a both. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Okay, thank you, Councilor Bergman. I think we'll try to go to a vote. I think we're going to call the question and go to a vote. Councilor Grant?
Real quick, the way the taxes are handled for businesses and residents is different, so I just want to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Grant. I think we will go to a vote now. All in favor of the motion, which is now with respect to the version posted on Civic Clerk as the recommended version, which is the amendment presented by Councilor Shannon. All in favor of that item, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. So that is the end of our deliberative agenda. We've already completed item 7, which is committee reports. That takes us to item 8, which is City Council General Affairs. Is there any city councilor that has an item for general affairs? Councilor Newbeeser.
I do have an item that's really pertinent to Burlington. I just read in VT Digger a story released covering an organization which most folks are probably not familiar with because it's a national organization with no roots in our state called Right, who's attempting to roll back progress our community made around expanding the vote and strengthening democracy through all resident voting. I think this is really important that residents and all of our counselors and elected officials who represent our community follow. This national organization's run by pretty extreme folks, Trump mega donors, folks like Karl Rove and former Donald Trump Attorney General Bill Barr. This follows a trend that we're seeing in Vermont, unfortunately. Americans for Prosperity, a right-wing dark money group funded by the fossil fuel industry, and the Koch brothers just announced they will be dropping $250,000 on a digital and mailer campaign to turn to essentially convince Vermonters and Burlingtonians that making progress on climate is a mistake. This is likely just the beginning, because this is the politics that fortunately our city and our state have mostly been immune from, but I do think it's important that we are following this. These attempts to weaken our democracy and halt progress on climate, on democracy reform, from right-wing money and Trump mega donors, certainly should concern us, concerns me, and should concern all Vermonters, regardless of their political affiliation, particularly when politicians, unfortunately, at the federal level, are starting to question democracy itself. I have a few articles I'd like to, which I can send to city staff after the meeting, put them on the consent agenda for the council record for folks to review. Thanks. For next consent agenda.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Newbeezer, for July 15th. Any other councilors have an item for general affairs? Councilor Grant, and then Councilor Litwin.
Thank you. So we had the override of the governor's veto concerning overdose prevention centers. I, for one, am greatly relieved that we now can move forward with getting one operating in our city to help address some of the issues downtown that we have. So just in terms of looking at the process, we need to start to think about that in terms of which organizations that are working in the community already would be best suited for this. I think it'll be important to have people that have experience with people that are suffering from substance use disorder, already have those relationships, because that will be really the best way to get people to use our OPC. And as soon as we can, to start talking about location, which I do believe, in order to be effective, has to be in the downtown area. Anyone going through withdrawal is not going to wait to be transported or try to transport themselves to a place that might delay. So I want us to keep that in mind. I also, someone sent me from June 18th last week a community forum on public safety from St. Albans. Really remarkable. I really encourage everyone to watch it. It's on YouTube. If you didn't know it was the city of St. Albans and you just closed your eyes and you listened to what everybody was talking about, you would have thought it was the city of Burlington, maybe Brattleboro, maybe Rutland, Barry, and other places where the things that we are experiencing are happening. And it's not related to politics. It's related to decisions that we've made in our country during COVID, and so much more that has been talked about, won't go into. But just listening to the concerns, it's the very same things. And I really encourage people to listen to it, because I keep thinking that we hurt ourselves over and over again by making these issues political. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Litwin?
Thank you. And Councilor Grant took some of the words right out of my mouth, which is always nice. I can be a little quicker, but congratulations to former legislator Emma Mulvaney-Stanek on all the work that she did to bring H72 across the finish line, and I thank her for that. As somebody who works in substance misuse prevention, I watch that very closely, and I'm looking forward to a process. And I hope that I know there are many bridges ahead, but I hope that we can have a transparent and open and honest process early on so that we can start to address any concerns that people have from things like siting and zoning, like Councilor Grant just brought up, that anything that would be an impasse for folks, we start identifying those now so that we can actually be successful in opening that center. Additionally, I just wanted to say that some meeting many weeks ago, some constituent wrote a letter about F-35s and that they work with folks who have various disabilities, including auditory sensitivity. And I cannot remember the date that we did that, but I have been, I actually thought their email to be really thoughtful and to not be unreasonable in asking us to just sort of shut down the F-35 program and tell the FAA what to do. So I've been in contact with a couple different folks, including their command down, who's operating out of Georgia, not Vermont, but Georgia the state, and they are looking into whether that is possible to have an alert system that could be maybe text-based to allow people to have a little bit more notice, so that they could do something like put on headphones on somebody who's sensitive to that, or take whatever precautions they feel they need to take. So if I have an update at some point, something tells me federal government doesn't move fast, but they are reviewing security concerns related to that and so forth, but they seem very open and friendly and collaborative to the idea. So I wanted to say that. And then lastly, I just want to say, and I know we're going to hear from the mayor, but I didn't bring this up during the budget conversation because we had quite a bit going on, but I really want to see us to continue to have more dialogue on the encampment responses. And as I look at the proposed budget, I just think there's more opportunity for us to discuss. Two of those sites are in my ward, one of which is a point of contention, which is the urban reserve area, and I see that that has been budgeted, and it is not in alignment with the original memo as presented, which was for spaces that were prohibited. And so I realize there's maybe a disconnect or a disagreement rather in whether the urban reserve is an appropriate space to support an encampment. I believe it is not, for a variety of reasons, and so I just would like the working session that happened at the last meeting, I just think wasn't enough time, and so I would like to just ask that we continue to have dialogue on that, especially on the urban reserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other counselor with an item for general affairs? Takes us to our next item, which is item 9, City Council President, Council updates. The only update that I would have here is, my understanding is for our next meeting on July 15th, that the elevator here in City Hall will be out of order. And because of accessibility concerns, we cannot host the meeting here in Concourse Auditorium. I have some concerns about our trying to pack everyone into the Busher Conference Room. And so I would like to flag for you all that I'm thinking about exploring some opportunities to take the city council on the road. And if any counselors here or the mayor's administration have any suggestions about where we may be able to land for our meeting on July 15th, it will need to have tech hookups for town meeting TV and for other folks to be able to tune in. But I think it could be a good opportunity for us to get out in the community, out here of City Hall, and to allow additional folks an opportunity to access the city council. The other item that I will mention, and perhaps a reason why we may need more space, is I've been in touch with the chair of our school board, Claire Wool, about our hosting a joint meeting with our school board that evening, spending some time focused on school-related issues. My understanding is that the council used to, on occasion, host joint meetings with the school board. I think there are another number of items facing the city right now that have some overlap between this body and the school board. So reach out to me if you have any ideas about where we can end up on July 15th, and stand by for an update as to whether or not we'll be able to spend some time that evening with our friends on the school board. That is my update. Mayor, that brings us to you. Item 10, the Mayor, General Affairs.
Thank you, Councilor President Travers. I'll start with an invitation that maybe the Old North End Community Center would be a good host place, my backyard here on July 15th, something to consider. It is a large space on that bottom floor that is accessible, has ample room, and is where the MPAs for Ward 2 and 3 are hosted. Also, having spent a lot of time at the Miller Center, that's another option. But anyway, y'all can choose that, but we're happy to help. So in terms of a mayor's update, I want to just highlight a few key things. Again, I tried to organize this in 4 general areas of general updates from my office, city highlights, where I've been in the community in terms of engagement, and then finally regional, I've changed it really, regional, state, and legislative activity for those folks following along. So tonight we delivered the fiscal year 25 budget. I think we've talked enough about that, so period. And moving on, as you might know and be tracking, I've been convening over 20 community members on community safety. I'm calling them my advisors for immediate improvements we can do within the city. Those folks are going to be delivering recommendations on July 9th, where we'll be meeting with city staff, and I'll be bringing that forward to you at July 15th for your consideration. They have generated, pages and pages of ideas, and we really worked hard at the last meeting last week to really synthesize that down to some core, 3 to 5 core things that we could do right now. But that entire list and generation of ideas is something I will certainly share in its entirety, both to city staff and to all of you. So that's coming very soon. The camping work session that we held last meeting or so, I met last week with Sarah Russell, who was on vacation for the remainder of that week after she presented for that piece of substantial work. And I again want to thank her for being with us for that long period of time at the last meeting y'all had. But we took every piece of feedback and we went through it in great detail. The following day, I also met with our department heads and we went through your feedback with department heads. And so we vetted all of that. There is a memo underway. She just came back from vacation this week. So that's coming to you hopefully early next week. I had her first work on with Joe McGee in my office, that $50,000 budget. So that was here in time for the budget debate. You have that in your packet tonight. But there'll be a detailed piece of feedback about what pieces, again, we can incorporate into responding to this chronic issue, because again, camping is not a solution. It's not a policy solution by any means with our housing emergency for unhoused folks. But in that memo, there will also be an update on a larger shelter plan that we're trying to put in place. We received notice, for example, that the Social Security Administration office on Pearl Street is now an available site. We're working with partners to try to explore this, and that's on the edge of the Old North End. So there's a lot of considerations that are going into this, and I think I'll work with the Council President Travers if it makes sense for another work session on July 15th, but I want you to have that memo next week, knowing there's a 3-week gap between this meeting and July 15th. Another update, I talked about this not in the last couple of meetings, but as I talked when I first came into office, I think it's critically important that we acknowledge repair work that's needed on this larger issue that this city has tried to grapple with since early October around the war and the harm happening in Israel and Palestine. And so I wanted to give an update. The CJC, our Burlington Community Justice Center, has been hard at work trying to organize repair circles, restorative circles, and there'll be 3 of them happening in different locations throughout the city this summer. The intent here is to really bring people together for critical conversations around the local way we've had this conversation and where there's points of engagement. And we're almost done drafting this because I would really like to have this be a partnership between the City Council, my office, and the CJC to really provide some local support for purposeful conversation on this. Our school district has been doing a little bit of this at the end of the school district calendar year. And I think we have a lot more to do here. Rachel Jolly, who's our director of CJC, has engaged a couple of folks who are subject matter experts from Middlebury and UVM. And so I really think this will be a productive space, at least to offer it and see how it goes. Also bringing in RAIB to help hold this space. And anyway, I hope this will be a partnership. So once there's a little more there in the next week or so, I'll see if folks are interested in co-sponsoring that. In terms of internal city work that we've been hard at work, I am very excited to say that on July 15th, I expect to bring a candidate for city attorney to all of you. And we have made this candidate available. I think the council president is scheduling some sessions for you to have some preliminary conversations with this individual. I'm very grateful for this candidate. I think this person would serve the city well. I look forward to you all doing your deliberations and then presenting that candidate in their entirety on July 15th for the public as well. Two other leadership decisions I've made since the last meeting was appointing an interim director for our RAIB department. Pit Kiomanovan is our new interim director. She has served the city for a number of years, first in CEDO around community engagement roles there, including supporting the MPAs, creating our first city's language access policy, as well as the city's Trusted Community Voices engagement team that was critical during COVID. She is serving in this interim capacity as we start to, again, redesign and reconfigure what we are doing within critical equity work as a city. And I really appreciate Pitt jumping right in right before Juneteenth, which was a big ask, and working with her small team to help lead us forward in this department. The other interim director I've appointed that will start July 1st is within our HR department. As we know, Karen Durfee is about to transition out at the end of the week of this critical job. Really want to extend my deep appreciation for the legacy of work, again, that Karen will leave behind here in the city. But our interim director, while we begin a search here, will be Lynn Reagan, who's been serving currently as our assistant director in HR. She's actually the longest serving HR employee we have since 2016 in that department right now. And she's worked with most of our city departments as such. So I know we'll be in capable hands as we start that hiring process. One other just thing around internally, it's brought up in every meeting around the continued community safety issues that we're having downtown. And I mentioned in your last meeting, around beginning hotspot coordination meetings. And so I've asked Cara this is another last name I'm trying to practice more, Alarswani, thank you, who is the director of our Business and Workforce Development Department, as it has such a high concentration of support and work around Church Street and the downtown, to actually take over internal coordination of this, because as the mayor, I'm finding I can't do it all. So she's going to be leading that. As I mentioned last time, we've been focusing on the library, started working on the downtown garage. Next up will certainly be the pods and the bus depot area ahead of BHS coming back into session. Really trying to try some cross-department better and stronger coordination. Things are happening, and as I said last time, please know that. There are things we are trying to put in place that are not ready for public knowledge quite yet, including in the retail theft area. So know that we are taking this seriously and trying to really try new things and strengthen coordination around where there's presence, et cetera, in these various spaces. So please stay tuned for more. In terms of some highlights on community engagement, busy as usual. I've met with the Wharf Lane residents and alongside BHA, Burlington Housing Authority, very similar to Decker Towers, is ongoing issues where, again, talking of community safety, things are coming into those buildings related to drugs and people who are unhoused, issues of just public safety in general. I really appreciated that meeting with the residents because they came organized with very immediate and I think very reasonable ask of BHA. And BHA came also ready as a good, stronger partner. And I appreciate some evolution there around realizing how residents really obviously deserve a very safe place to live. And there's some better and stronger partnerships coming out of that. I mention that because the city has invested some of our Housing Trust Fund dollars into Decker Towers specifically to really make sure that we are doing our part to support these residents. And I am hopeful that we are going to find temporary solutions to help folks be safer in their buildings while we work on these larger issues in the community at large. I also met with CATMA, which is, I will not remember this acronym, but anyway, they work on transportation issues and working with institutions largely, but the city of Burlington is a member of CATMA, and I mention this because this is efforts to get people out of cars, to support people on bikes and being able to be pedestrians in the city. And I think there's more we can do here, and I just want to flag that as we talk about larger climate goals and the fact that we are a very large employer in this region. There are more ways I think we can align incentives to get people, city employees specifically, onto bikes, onto buses, and certainly walking when possible. So stay tuned for more on that. I have now had 3 out of my 4 mayor meetups throughout the city. My last one for the month will be this Friday at noon at the Fletcher Free Library. All are welcome regardless of where you live in the city. We've offered them at different times, and we've had 20 plus. I think we hit almost 50 in the New North End in the first one. People are really eager to engage, and I can tell that the different times and different locations are helping folks be able to engage with the mayor's office and to give updates, and for us, most importantly, hear back from folks. Since these meetings are recorded by CCTV, I want to give a shout out to their 40th anniversary. That was a really lovely event down at the Intervale. They have been great partners in making sure that local government is accessible to folks, that people can see what we are up to on a regular basis. And while we can certainly be covering more city meetings, and I hear that from Councilor Grant, I just frankly appreciate how they've been a long-standing partner in the work with the city, and I was glad to help honor them a few days ago. And also in the category of honoring, at the MPA meeting for Wards 2 and 3, we were able to honor former Democratic State Representative Kurt McCormick for his multiple decades of service to the state, both Rutland and Burlington. Big leader around climate, big leader around transportation. This man doesn't even own a car. Like, he lives his values, as people shared multiple times over. And I was glad to be part of that celebration in a very bipartisan way. We had an amazing event Juneteenth, and I hope that councilors, I know I saw some of you out there along the events, but our office receives a lot of feedback in general. And one of the most wonderful things is we received a lot of positive feedback around Juneteenth, how it was the best one yet, that there was great concentration of joy and celebration in the downtown part of the city, that it was a great way to honor so many people within our community. I was able to be part of the community awards ceremony on that Friday night. And among many folks around the state that we were able to honor, we also honored Dr. Vicki Garrison, who's a longtime Burlington resident, born and raised here. Her mom was one of the founding mothers, if you will, of the King Street Center. We were also able to do a number of awards for young people in our city, including youth from AALV and King Street Center who are doing peer-to-peer mentoring. It was just a great moment of really honoring, lifting up that work. We have 5 more electric buses, y'all, from the Green Mountain Transit, and BED was a big part of helping to leverage those funds. That was a very hot day for that press conference, but look for those on the roads. It's helping in many ways. A couple of just brief things. Burlington hosted the Summer Games this last weekend for the Special Olympics, in the first time since 2019, and it was a great event to be able to honor these athletes from all over the city, including athletes from Burlington and Chittenden County. And some of the staff pulled me aside to just really encourage us to think a little more broadly as we talk around equity and both not only physical accessibility, but accessibility for folks living with all numbers of disabilities. And I take on that challenge and look forward to working on that more. My kids and I helped kick off the Fletcher Free Library Summer Reading Challenge, and another great moment of showing when the community shows up into spaces, there is just it's just great to see community convening in the downtown and in the library, which is such an important part of our community assets. So that is great, and I really appreciate just the enthusiasm that those librarians continue to bring in every space I ever share with them. Just one other thing in community engagement, and then to legislative very briefly, because I know we are about to end early tonight, and I do not want to stand in the way of that. But I've been talking about more regional coordination, not only with our housing emergency, but just better coordination as the city of Burlington. And this week, it might be tomorrow, I didn't check my calendar, I will be meeting for the first time with town managers from around the county And actually was brought up by the Winooski town manager because they are also seeing now more folks having to try to live on public lands in other towns. There is an uptick interest in talking about our housing emergency for unhoused people. So we'll have that conversation. I'm also meeting with Charlie Baker from CCRP soon, which is the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, to really begin to strategize on how we can go at this in a collaborative way. Peter Clavel, by the way, former Mayor Peter Clavel did not have an MOU. I did research and track that down. He said it sounds like a good idea, but he did not actually have a formal agreement. Just wanted to close that loop. And then finally, on legislative activity, I held a debrief with our state delegation. We had most of the state reps, and one of the senators was able to be there to debrief the legislative session that formally wrapped up on Monday with the veto override session, to really document kind of where we are as a city, what did we achieve that was beneficial for Burlington, and what was either left literally on the wall, which is a thing at the State House, or was not passed as strongly as it needed to be. It was a really good meeting of debrief, and I think pointed out some points of some stronger collaboration of understanding, for example, retail theft. They passed some stronger penalties on the state level, and I pointed out we have to also think about the front end of things. It is not actually helpful if we're only thinking about sentencing, because we have to think about interrupting further upstream, if you will, on those issues, as well as some concerning changes, I think, on criminal justice reform that raise the age. And we know, I'm hearing feedback in these community safety advisory meetings, and Councilor Doherty and Councilor Grant have heard this from youth advocates in that room. There's a disproportionate impact of young people in the city, Black and brown kids in particular, who are being drawn into the criminal activity. And I'm concerned around the misalignment when we start to do things like raise the age, which is impacting young people, and what's happening to our young people locally. So there's a lot of room for coordination. We're going to meet again at the end of August, and we're going to figure out how to include you all, honoring public meeting rules, but I want to make sure you are engaged as we set the next agenda for January 2025. So we'll be meeting regularly soon. And then finally, a couple of you mentioned this, H72 passed. It was a roller coaster of a day on Monday. It failed, and then it passed. They reconsidered in the Senate, which I very much appreciate, that bipartisan effort to get that over the finish line. This is critical. We hold a press gaggle, which I even learned what that term was last week, which is essentially a meeting with the media to really talk about what comes next. And I want to get right to work on this with all of you to figure out the zoning, to figure out the community placement, to figure out the community process. But the law included enabling language that made this bill effective immediately upon passage. So that is rare in legislation, and I take that seriously, because this is a critical piece of the puzzle for us to really start to grapple with the opioid crisis, but to also provide an alternative to what people have been forced to do, which is using in public spaces, not having access to as much drug testing as we really need right now with what's in the drug supply. And one really interesting observation is that at this press gaggle, we had almost all the library staff came to stand there in solidarity, because they are become the epicenter. They are de facto the place where people are forced to use, and I want to be able to support them and our entire community. So I'm looking forward to a good collaborative conversation with all of you to get this off the ground and to work with our partners. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. That brings us to the end of our agenda, and absent an objection, seeing no other business, I will declare the meeting adjourned at 9:20 p.m. Thank you very much.